societies. Okay, while for the weird societies, they just represent only 12% of the world's population. And we didn't really listen from those who has 80% of the population. Okay, so I am quite curious. Is there any experience or any research evidence about this research agenda in other societies, especially where I am born in, where I grow up from, the Chinese societies? Okay, so currently I'm working in Hong Kong. So I'm thinking, are there any experience and evidence? And what we can do in these societies, the non-Western societies. So today I have some students coming from Cambodia. Also, Cambodia is Southeast Asia. So it's also not part of the Western societies. So whether their experience, their evidence can be generalized is a question. Okay, so we need more research conducted in other societies. So I'm going to share with you my research in Hong Kong and Beijing, and also some research still data collecting in Shenzhen and the Guangdong province of China. Okay, so they are all part of the Chinese societies. And some of you may know that China is huge. Okay, so I'm just focusing on part of China, while there is a big variance within China. Okay, so the theoretical rationale behind the research is that I want to promote culturally responsive digital learning experience in early childhood settings. So the key idea is culturally responsiveness, responsive pedagogy. And there is another rationale supporting my research is the 6 Cs proposed by Marina Birds. And these 6 Cs are the ones that can support us to think about technology-enabled learning environment. So they are communication, which means the facilitator, the adult, should engage children in a two-way conversations, not just from teachers to children. It should be a two-way conversation, and it could be conversations among peers. The second C is collaboration, which means the facilitator would suggest that children to seek help from peers. Okay, so it's peer collaboration. The third C is community building, which means the facilitator would let children share their works with their community, with their class. And also content creation. So children would be encouraged to work on projects to create something belong to themselves. And also creativity. The facilitator would encourage a diversity of approaches and materials in children's work. So they can be creative, they can create what they want. And lastly, choice of conduct is more like a kind of behavioral self-regulation. And children, they need to learn that the tools and materials provided should be used with care. Okay, so these are the 6 Cs, and these are very good principles for me to think about those digital learning programs to be incorporated into the early childhood settings in China, I mean the greater China. Okay, so another idea behind is culturally responsive pedagogy, or CRP. So CRP actually steps on the strengths of individuals, and is also a pedagogical approach. And it recognizes the importance of using children's cultural tools or experiences because children are not living in a vacant, but in a society, right, in a community. So definitely they will bring the funds of knowledge from their original families and communities to the preschool. So we want to appreciate this as their strengths, not their weakness, so that we can empower and enable their learning based on their cultural backgrounds. And we will also use their culture as the bridge between technology learning and their previous experience. Okay, so to bring this gap between their previous experience and what they need to learn using the digital learning program. Okay, so the idea is to strengthen learners' sense of identity. So they will feel that they are part of this learning process, and also to promote equity and inclusivity in the classroom. Okay, so we will appreciate children from different backgrounds. Even for Chinese, they may be from different subcultures, as China has a lot of variance within the culture. And also, especially in like a multicultural society like Hong Kong and maybe other countries like Singapore, they also have minority ethnic children. So we would like to promote this kind of equity and inclusivity using this approach. And we will engage them in the creation of materials, in decision making of the learning content. And they can choose what to learn, that means, and also to support their critical thinking, their creativity. So to be more specific, this CRP actually involves 4 steps. Step 1 is to establish inclusion. So it emphasizes the human purpose of what is being learned and its relationship to children's experience. Okay, so at the very beginning, the teacher would share the ownership of knowing with the children. Okay, so then the class will assume that they have this capacity to make a difference in the classroom. Okay, so they will feel very welcomed because teacher would treat them equally. Okay, and to invite them to be part of this learning process. So the second step is to develop positive attitude within among the children. So we need to give them what we are going to do. We need to give them the goals. And we will also make sure that the learning activities are related to children's experience and their previous cultural knowledge. We will encourage them to make choices in the content and even the assessment. Okay, so based on their experiences. So we will not give a standard kind of learning content to all the students. The third step is that we will enhance meaning at the same time. It's not just for fun. We will also try to provide some challenges, some experiences that are challenging to the children so that we can trigger their higher order thinking and critical inquiry. So we will give them sometimes real world issues for their problem solving. So it's very similar to inquiry. Okay, so inquiry-based kind of learning, and we will encourage them to discuss their experiences and try to bring children's voices into the classroom dialogue. The last step is that we engender their competence. So it's a solidation stage. We will really solidate the experience learned from the process. So it's also part of our evaluation. It's considered as similar to the notion of assessment for learning. So we will connect the assessment process to children's world, their values, and also to include multiple ways to represent knowledge. So it's not a single way of knowing the world. So children, they can share what they have learned, and also try to represent their different skills, different understandings in their works. Okay, so we also encourage self-assessment. Okay, so this is also to appreciate difference. So some researchers also mentioned that to achieve this kind of culturally responsive education in early childhood, we need to make sure that the learning is STEM-based rather than challenge-based. It's not competition. It should be like a project for them, and they will all be part of this project. And also we will welcome the integration of arts in digital learning. So it's not just STEM education. It would be great if it can be STEAM education, because arts is so creative. So we would appreciate this kind of critical thinking, creativity in the learning process. And we use storytelling as a way to enter the learning process. So story has the power of connecting children's learning to the cultural background, especially if you have a class of children from different cultural backgrounds, then it would be great if you can use some stories based on the multicultural literature. And the last one is that we organize exhibition for sharing, okay, so that they can show what they have learned. Okay, here I would like to show a diagram showing you how can we develop such kind of experience for children, especially today's focus. The focus of my talk is on robot programming. And actually, how to make robot programming curriculum to be culturally responsive. Here is a diagram. So the first step is that we select a story picture book based on children's cultural backgrounds, their interests. And then we can identify a problem from this story plot based on after the shared reading, okay? And based on the problems co-identified by the teacher and children, we can encourage children to code with some digital technologies, such as robots, or sometimes we can use iPad as well. And then we also encourage them to use unplugged materials to be involved in engineering design. Okay, so it's maker education. So both plugged and unplugged experiences will enrich the learning process. And eventually we will invite children to share what they have made, what they have developed in the process. Okay, so we have developed a set of culturally responsive robot programming curriculum using the robots called Matata Lab. Okay, so as you can see that I will not show you the content of the package because it's all in Chinese. Okay, so it's actually an embodiment of the procedure of designing this curriculum. Okay, so the benefits of this curriculum is to develop children's computational thinking and their design thinking. And because of the time limit, I will not go into the details. I'm sure many of you would know a little bit more if you can listen to Marina Bird's talk later. So about computational thinking, right? So actually, I would like to share some empirical evidence about the benefits of this program. So we use this model to train the teachers how to implement culturally responsive robot programming curriculum. So it's called the curriculum-based professional learning model. So CBPL is slightly different from some traditional professional training approaches because it emphasizes the basis of a high quality curriculum Okay, so this kind of professional learning is built on a high quality curriculum. So they will be able to understand children's experiences in the classroom. So it's really authentic learning. So this kind of learning process, this kind of learning approach for the teachers is considered as effective because it's situated. Okay, so we use different methods to enable our teachers to implement such a new curriculum. It's new to them. Okay, so we use workshops, of course. We have some on-site coaching, and we also try to build a professional learning community within the teachers so that they can better understand this curriculum. So we try to use this theory of action model to evaluate their learning outcomes and the effect of this, the implementation of the new curriculum. Okay, so we had the pre and post test. Here are the evidence. Okay, so we use a 6-week robot programming curriculum. We trained teachers how to implement it in their own classroom. And at the same time, we had a comparison group, which is other classrooms, and they use block play only without any robots. Okay, so the children, they were at their age 5, okay, which is the last year of the preschool education in China. And we use tech check as a way to understand their growth of their computational thinking. We use picture sequencing task to evaluate children's sequencing abilities. And we use the HTKS to evaluate their ability of self-regulation. Okay, here are the results. I would like to show that we found that there is no significant difference at the baseline, okay, on any demographic variables such as the age, gender, family, socioeconomic status between the intervention group and the comparison group. No significant difference. And then, well, for the dependent variables, we use ANCOVA, and we found that after controlling the covariates such as age, gender, family SES, we did find some interesting results. Okay, so, but it's non-significant, but there were some significant effects. We found that this robot program curriculum can significantly improve children's sequencing ability as compared to the control group. So sequencing ability is an indicator of children's early coding skills, but no difference regarding their self-regulation. And then we conducted the model rating analysis, and we found some more interesting results. For example, we found that children in the coding group, in the robot programming group, if they have lower level of self-regulation at the baseline, they will have larger improvements in the coding skills, in the sequencing ability over time, okay, as compared to the block play group, which is the control group, okay? So lower level of self-regulation at baseline, they will have a larger improvement in their coding skills. The second interesting finding is that children in the robot coding program, if they are older, they will have actually larger improvements, okay, in the computational thinking. Although for all the children, there is no significant group difference, but for children, if we see the age as a moderator, children with an older age, they will learn much better in terms of their improvement of their computational thinking. Okay. So here I would like to share some implications before I end today's sharing. Okay, so the first implication is that this kind of digital learning is powerful. It can really encourage creativity and self-regulation. And we need to provide this kind of experience with cultural and developmental appropriateness so that it can lay a solid foundation for children, even their school readiness, including their sequencing ability, computational thinking, and maybe self-regulation. And the second idea is that in our observation, classroom observations, we found that this kind of experiences are really beneficial and positive for the children, and because it's out of their intrinsic motivation. But we cannot draw the conclusion that this kind of culturally responsive pedagogy is better than a traditional approach, such as a game-based approach, because we didn't compare, we didn't make this as the focus of this study. But there are some general and practical lessons we can learn from the study is that we need to first be able to provide dedicated space in the classroom with both traditional and digital learning materials so that we can support children to learn more about technology. The second idea is that we have to upgrade the schedule to provide sufficient time, because in China, most of the kindergartens, they are still using a slightly traditional schedule. They didn't have time ready for their digital learning. So to change this, we need to make sure that the schedule is upgraded. And the third lesson that we can learn is that this kind of STEM activities should be integrated into their original school-based curriculum so that it can be most powerful for empowering children. And also the last idea is that CBPL, curriculum-based professional learning, may be a promising approach to providing this kind of STEM-related training for our teachers, because most of them, they received traditional training. They didn't learn much about robots, programming education, or other STEM topics. So these are new to them. We can consider to use CBPL as a way to train them. Okay, so one last thing I want to say is that culture is our root and technology is our wings. Okay, so we are actually embracing a future with culturally appropriate digital learning experiences for our children. Okay, so thank you so much. Feel free to contact me and let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you for your presentation. So I will share with you all of us. I will share with you the video that we have from the last panel speaker.
Today I want to talk about the work I've done over the past couple.
É melhor apresentares a pessoa.
Dr. Katharina will present in this video the project which she leads, Allow Kids, a algorithm for kids, in which primary school teachers from all Bavaria are. What?
Katharina.
Can you hear me?
Peço desculpa. Podiam desligar os microfones, obrigada. Já podes, Katharina.
So I will share with all of you the video presentation from Dr. Katharina. Dr. Katharina, as I said before, is from the chair of computer science education at the Technologies University of Munich, and she will present the project which she later Algo Kids algorithm from kids which primary school teachers from all Baviera are use and work algorithms and programming and accomplished in their teaching attempts by provide brand examples and clarify concepts about that. I'll share.
Of years and trying to bring programming into Bavarian primary schools. I'm going to explain the development and evaluation of our teaching concept and our teacher trainings, and by that hopefully take you on a little journey with me. Before I start, just to avoid any confusion, when I talk about programming, I mean not only the process of writing code, but also all the steps of problem solving along the way, which we also call computational thinking. So this is going to be the outline of my presentation. The presentation is pretty much about the question of how programming can find its way into Bavarian primary schools. I'm going to briefly introduce the situation we have in Germany and Bavaria, just to give you a little bit of context. I will give you some insight into the research design we have followed over the years, and of course, I'll talk about what we've done in schools and in teacher education, and I'll also talk about the future direction of our work. In Germany, there are no binding guidelines on whether computer science should be integrated into primary schools. However, we have several normative guidelines that suggest doing so. For example, a position paper on digital education from the Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs. This paper calls for basic knowledge of programming, algorithms, and computational thinking to be included as compulsory components in primary school curricula. And even more importantly, there is a strategy paper on education in the digital world, which is supposed to serve as a basis for future curricula. And here there is also an area about algorithms. When I talk about these nationwide guidelines, it is important to know that Germany consists of 16 federal states. And each of these federal states has its own school system and curriculum. So implementing changes in the educational system can take a while in Germany. Bavaria here in blue on the picture is the biggest state of Germany and is not only home of the Oktoberfest, it is one of the few states that has computer science as a compulsory subject in all secondary schools. So we have at first 4 years of primary school, and after that students can continue their education at 3 different types of schools. Only one leads to university. And in all of these secondary schools, students are required to participate in computer science classes. But there's no such thing on the primary school level. But we are working to change that. I will talk about this in detail later, but I wanted to already give you a brief overview of our work right now for a better understanding of the whole thing. In 2016, we started on developing a course concept for programming in primary school, and we tested and evaluated the concept with around 150 students. After that, we gained the attention from the Bavarian Ministry of Education and got the chance to work with 20 schools from all over Bavaria. We developed and evaluated a teacher training program, and our course concept was tested and further developed by 40 teachers in total. And right now we are working again together with the Ministry of Education to enable a broader rollout of our concepts based on the research and our experiences. During all this time, the question of how to bring programming into Bavarian primary schools was the driving force behind our work. And we wanted to gain insights on several levels regarding this question. We wanted to know what content and methods are suitable for programming in primary school, how to enable primary school teachers with no prior knowledge of computer science at all to program with their students, and we wanted to know what general conditions have to be in place for the whole thing to work. To answer these questions, we decided to use the design-based research approach. Here, one develops so-called design principles or design guidelines from theory. And on the basis of these, one develops an intervention, in our case, a course concept for programming in primary school. Then you test the intervention in the field with students and have also teachers test it. Of course, this only makes sense if the teachers are trained properly. Then you evaluate everything and draw conclusions on the design principles and the intervention. And after that, you evaluate that again. So it's an iterative process here. And yeah, of course, it is meant to generate or refine theories in the process. As already said, we started to develop the course concept in 2016, tested and evaluated it with students ourselves, had teachers tested it and evaluated everything. And as you can see, we had a sort of double-decker design-based research process because we also followed the approach in developing the teacher training. If we now look again at the 3 levels on which we wanted to gain insights, in the upper right corner, the contents and methods level is covered in this part of our research. The teacher training level here. And the general conditions are investigated over the entire field. And now I would like to give you some insight into how we approach programming in the classroom. We developed a course concept that consists of 3 units. We have this somewhat unusual 3-day format because students had to come to our university to participate in the course. And it was simply easier to have them over for several hours instead of just single hours. I brought you some impressions from the course concept. At the beginning of the course, the students are supposed to get an insight into what an algorithm, what programming basically is. The teacher or later also other students are programmed to do small tasks in the classroom, for example, open the window, open the door or something like that. And we have the teacher robot that executes the commands only if they are precisely formulated. So if, for example, the command turn to the right is given, the teacher robot turns endlessly to the right, and yeah, the children quickly realize that they have not expressed themselves precisely enough, and they have a lot of fun in the meantime. In the next step, the students describe algorithms in everyday language. Here, for example, instructions for making a jam sandwich. And even if you don't understand German, I guess you can see how the student from this example tried to make his algorithm more and more precise by adding little comments in his algorithm. Afterwards, the students describe sequences in different forms of representation. And for this, we have developed tasks in which small roots have to be described. The solutions to the tasks are formulated in different ways in everyday language, which you can see on the left with the help of symbols, and then with haptic scratch commands that you can see on the right. So you can work with these unplugged scratch commands on the board or on different fabrics and so on. The unplugged scratch commands are especially good for comparing different solutions because you can also include control structures, as you can see here on these pictures. After the unplugged programming, the students program in Scratch. And for this, we have developed a number of quite different tasks. For example, more guided tasks like these worked examples, but also tasks that allow the students to work more freely. And the last step of the course, the students are supposed to plan their programs before implementing them in Scratch. And here, you can see a project script we worked with. We tested the course concept with about 150 students in class 3 and 4, collected data and further developed the course concept. For example, we filmed 7 course runs in their entirety, recorded the children's screens and saved all of the student programming results. Of course, we were interested in the course concept, so we asked ourselves, does it all work as we imagined? We wanted to know where possible problems lie, where the students ask a lot of questions, and so on and so on. But we also wanted to learn more about the students themselves. For example, we wanted to investigate how the children proceed in the learning process, what differences we can find between boys and girls, what they can learn in such a short period of time. And if you are interested in these questions, please feel free to look at our publications. In order to test our concept with teachers, we were lucky to be able to carry out a project for the Bavarian Ministry of Education, where we were able to collect further data. So in the project AlgoKids, we worked with 20 schools throughout Bavaria. So all primary schools were invited to apply if they wanted to be part of the project, and the selection was based on location, school demographic, technical equipment, and some other factors. So 20 schools were selected, and we started working with 2 teachers from each school, so 40 in total. The gender distribution was a bit one-sided, what was to be expected in primary school, I guess. but we were very happy that the age was a bit more balanced. So we were able to work with teachers with a lot of teaching experience, a lot of experience in integrating all kinds of things in their practice across a range of disciplines. The project went on for 2 years, and over the course of the project there were three-day teacher trainings. Right from the first teacher training, the teachers conducted their own teaching experiments, so they came back to the next training session with first experiences of programming with their students. And as far as the implementation was concerned, they were completely free in how many hours per week they would use for it, in which subject they would program, whether they would do it as a project or as an extracurricular activity. And they could also choose if they wanted to use our material. They could also further develop the material or create their own teaching materials. And during the project, we collected different data. I visited all the teachers at their schools, interviewed them, and also took part in some of their classes. The teachers collected all of the materials they created, and there were also several teacher questionnaires. Unfortunately, we don't have that much time, so I only brought a few perspectives of the teachers. Regarding the unplugged activities, they were really surprised that the activities relate to things they are already doing with their students, and that it can help with other parts of the existing curriculum. As you can see, one teacher says, the introduction was no extra work for me. Quite the opposite. It really helped me in my German lessons. And also many teachers there said that working with the unplugged scratch blocks really helped the students to engage deeper with their programs instead of following a trial and error approach. When it came to working in Scratch, at the first teacher training, many teachers were quite afraid of programming in Scratch. They were concerned that they can't answer all of the students' questions, that there are problems with the program and so on. So they were really, they had quite a lot of respect for that. And after they worked with their students, they were very surprised that the students are capable to solve a lot of their problems themselves and are also helping each other a lot. So this aspect of working together to solve problems was mentioned by really a lot of teachers. They reported, they told me about classes that really are very, very bad in working together, and all of a sudden these problems were gone when they were programming together. When I asked them what the biggest surprise after their first teaching attempts was, they mentioned the high motivation of both boys and girls. And many teachers noticed that students who were not doing very well in other subjects suddenly perform very well in computer science and programming. So I already talked a lot about what happens in the classroom. Now I would like to say a few things about our approach to teacher training. You already saw this overview. We had 3 teacher trainings over an extended period of time, and each teacher training went on for 3 days. At the beginning of the first teacher training, the teachers worked on selected tasks from our course concept, just to follow the students' insights, but also to understand possible difficulties of the students. After that, the teachers worked on the different programming concepts like sequences, iterations, or conditionals. We kept the input very short and instead let them work on hands-on activities, which they also could try or adapt with their classes. Once they had the chance to try things with their students, a big part of the second teacher training was sharing with each other what they had done and to present their best practices. And we also wanted to bring in ideas from theory and research, but again, we combined these ideas with hands-on activities that could be used in the classroom. I've brought you some teacher perspectives on the teacher training as well. They emphasized the need for sufficient teacher training and the opportunity to program themselves. So one teacher said, learning by reading doesn't work in programming, you have to do it. And they also told me that trying everything out themselves made them feel safe in the classroom. It was considered particularly positive that first experiences in the implementation at school could be gained between the individual training sessions. So that really enriched the teacher trainings. One teacher said, it is something completely different when you program alone or the students. You come back to the second training session with completely different questions. Regarding the organization of the trainings, the teachers could not imagine that it would work to conduct the trainings exclusively online. They thought that, the enthusiasm for it only develops through personal collaboration and engagement with it. So now some last words on what we are working on right now and what will probably, maybe happen in the future. In this school year, the Bavarian Ministry of Education has installed a working group with people from the ministry, teachers from the AlgoKids projects and me. We are developing our course concept into modules that fit in with existing subjects in primary school. So it's not planned to introduce a separate subject, computer science or programming, in the near future, but to instead programming should be integrated into the topics that already exist in the subjects. The group is also working on the development of a professional development concept that is able to reach more people. So we have, I guess, 2,400 primary schools in Bavaria. So we need a concept that can, simply reach a lot of people. And for this, a blended learning concept will be developed based on our teacher trainings. Now I have reached the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you a happy rest of the day and the conference in general. If you have feedback or questions regarding my talk, please feel free to write me a message. I am already on maternity leave, but I'm reading my mails and are happy to answer any questions.
Katharina, está sem microfone, sem som.
The space for discussion is now open. Please submit your question and comments for the chat box. I also synthesized some ideas in Portuguese from this presentation. Em termos gerais, poderíamos afirmar que essas três apresentações destacam aqui alguns aspectos essenciais, nomeadamente as questões da importância da utilização positiva da robótica e da promoção de experiências de aprendizagem positivas através do brincar, que promovam o desenvolvimento da criança. Paralelamente também, houve aqui também um destaque dos vários palestrantes para a importância dos contextos e dos ambientes que rodeiam a criança, e do impacto que isso pode ter na promoção do bem-estar emocional e social, quer na interação com o adulto, quer na interação com os pares. Destacaram-se ainda aqui alguns exemplos de práticas de desenvolvimento profissional, através de algumas metodologias específicas, seja a investigação baseada em design, ou seja também o uso da cultura de participação integrada no desenvolvimento profissional docente, destacando alguns aspectos essenciais, nomeadamente as questões de inclusão, a importância de haver aqui a considerar as características individuais das crianças que estão envolvidas e também dos contextos a que estão inseridos, a importância das atitudes quando propomos determinado tipo de propostas e de que forma é que a robótica, neste caso, e os brinquedos, nesse âmbito, podem estimular o desenvolvimento de atitudes positivas e também proporcionar experiências significativas que desenvolvam competências. Destacaram-se também alguns aspectos relativos à importância de considerarmos previamente a organização de espaços, disponibilizarmos provavelmente mais tempo para explorar estas questões do pensamento computacional, robótica, programação. Muito mais existe a fazer, estamos cá todos para isso, está aberto a momentos de discussão. Maybe I can start. I think we don't have right now any questions in the chat. Okay. I think is the vote, can be the vote. How you consider that the context condition the child's behavior and development? What recommendations would you make to teachers, family, and researchers regarding these aspects? I don't know who wants to answer this question. Sarika, Weipeng.
Yep, I can start. Yeah, thank you for a great program and listening to our presentations. Regarding recommendations, even hearing Dr. Yang's and Dr. Katharina's presentation, it just makes me think that gone are the days in terms of how we were contemplating the place for technologies. It's about time to embrace it. And there's wonderful research, and we as researchers, we always promote evidence-based practices. My own research from last 3 years of international research, and Dr. Katharina's German research, which is also now reaching the ministry and policy. In Australia itself, we are actually rethinking our own early childhood learning framework. So I think to research this power to now we've got that information that how technologies can be integrated, how coding, how robotics, and how these different conditions can be created. We're also coming up with professional learning programs. So we really want this to go upscale and sharing of this knowledge, because really we can't do research alone. It has to come from practice. So we can get together in this journey and learn together. That's the broader message in terms of what I have learned from all these presentations, to just go and embrace technologies and think of safe, ethical ways of integrating it, age-appropriate ways of integrating, because we know it does computational thinking skills. It enables children's self-regulation. It enables children's communication, collaboration, and all of that.
Okay, I would like to say a little bit. Yeah, I totally agree with Sarika. nowadays is already, we are embracing a digital future. So we have to make sure that our children are ready for it. In terms of recommendations, first of all, we need to be mindful about the context. Definitely, we need to have this socio-cultural understanding before we want to integrate, not just technology, but also anything, okay? So I think the idea is you need to understand your own context, your own preschool, for example, the classroom, and then be able to make changes to not just the space, but also the schedule, and also your connection, the connection between the preschool and families. So I'm sure that for now, I didn't show you the efforts put into the families actually, but it's actually a very crucial part. If parental involvement is changed and they appreciate this kind of digital learning opportunities for their children, definitely there will be a better effect, okay? Especially the teachers will be more motivated.
Do microfone, Katharina.
Catarina, tens uma pergunta no chat.
We have another question here in the chat box. It's if in your countries, robots are using all schools or just some of them?
I can
As
say from the
educational purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. In the Australian early childhood, we are yet to see being used up to scale. So there are pockets of research that is happening, but my own program of robotics play for enabling children's STEM and social emotional learning is now a part of the department's funding. So it's a program that teachers have access for school readiness, and the Department of Education is providing funding. So my dream is that I develop a big team and roll this program out in the state of Victoria for now. In primary schools, it is becoming popular, and we are seeing a lot of schools coming on board to start STEM clubs, coding clubs, robotics club, whether it's after school or whether it's lunchtime clubs. So we are seeing it's gaining popularity, and also even in local libraries, in museums. So we see that in the primary school age. Hence, we see that it's better to start when they're really young to allow for the STEM careers. Especially that's the main policy push, to allow children to uptake STEM careers as they grow up.
In China, what is the reality, Dr. Weipeng?
Thank you so much. Actually, I'm not very sure what was the question, but in terms of just now what you mentioned about the China's reality, I would say that currently it could be still, we need to consider the divide between the urban China and rural China. So currently I'm actually located in Hong Kong, which is very international, very urbanized, but the class size is quite big. The space is limited because of the limited space, and in Hong Kong in general, not just for preschools. Okay, it's so expensive living here, and we cannot say that the conditions or the ecological factors that can be applied to the entire China. Okay, but based on my own understanding, I would say the average level is still not yet ready for the digital future. And I'm actually envisioning a future classroom for all the children, not just Chinese children, but also children from other cultures, especially those from less advantaged communities, that this classroom will give children the opportunities to use smart digital tools, devices, and they will not be afraid of this in the future. They will not feel that they lose at the beginning. They will not feel that they don't have such digital literacy in the future. So I hope that this is another issue of equity. So how can we really narrow down this digital divide? That's what I'm concerning, actually.
We have another question from Paulo.
Hi. First of all, thank you so much for your presentations. It was very interesting. I would like to ask if your research occurred mostly on public or private schools, or there is no difference between that?
Yeah, I can talk about my research from the Australian point of view. It was a mix. We started with the private kindergarten, but then we moved on to kindergartens which are public. And as Weipeng was saying, my interest is also to go into disadvantaged communities, to have these programs readily available. Hence, I applied to the department in terms of particularly having these programs and the resources for disadvantaged kindergartens, rural kindergartens, where they do not have internet, they do not have iPads, so particularly giving funding and allowing these technologies to be used for disadvantaged children with developmental delay, social emotional delay. So as I said, we are yet to see it go to scale, but yeah, if that answers your question. We started private, but the goal is to reach who needs the most. Not that the private schools should miss out, but they have their own pool of funding. So we want to have it as an inclusive approach.
Dr. Yang, I'm not sure if you want to say.
Okay, in terms of this, the school context, actually we conducted all the research in the not very privileged centers, both in Hong Kong and in mainland China. So in Hong Kong, we actually conducted research in the free kindergartens. So free means they are subsidized fully subsidized actually by the government. So they are also, the services are provided for the majority of the Hong Kong children. Yeah, and while those research conducted in mainland China, we work with the public kindergartens, so they are also funded by the government.
I don't know if I can say one thing more. Did you realize any difference between public or private results? Mostly in Australia, once in China, it was almost of them with public financed people.
Yep. Again, that wasn't the main research question, but from what I have learned for the past 3 years, there are more gains in learning with children who have developmental delay. So children who have communication, language development, self-regulation skills needs, they benefit more. And children who have communication already, are reading, writing, drawing to the level, they then get more skills, they learn faster, and their communication then it's just, you know, the divergent thinking, think out loud. So the gain then goes to the next level, if that makes sense. And it makes me think that maybe I should compare private and public kindergarten participants.
Thank you for your questions and your answers. Thank you all for sharing your knowledge and moments to enjoy reflection about computing in the first years of schooling, cross-curricular integration, and also about playing with artificial intelligence, robotics technologies, which support children's learning and development in family context and also in school context or kindergarten context. We will now break for lunch and meet at 3:30 p.m. to hear Dr. Marina Vers, our keynote speaker, speak on keynote coding as another language. Enjoy your lunch. See you soon. If you have any question, you can send us an email. Thank you, all of you.
Obrigada, obrigada, Katharina. Thank you very much, Weipeng, Sarika, for sharing with us. And you are invited to continue at our conference if you can. In your country is no days late, but if you can't to stay to another conference, you are invited. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
No.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Obrigada e bom almoço a todos. Até às 3:30.
Obrigada, obrigada. Até.
Luís, obrigada. Não te esqueças da Marina. Tchau.
Não te preocupes. Já tenho o meu iate ali.
Vai buscá-la, por favor.
Okay.
Até logo.
Até logo. Bom
até
almoço. Logo. Podíamos almoçar todos juntos, mas já que não dá.
Não, podemos almoçar na mesa.
Beijinho, até logo, até logo.
Até logo.
Até logo.
Pronto. Obrigada a todos por terem
até logo.
estado. Até logo.
Tchau, até logo.